I always thought of myself as invincible, a notion reinforced by my active lifestyle, balanced diet, and regular medical checkups. So when I started feeling unusually fatigued, I attributed it to stress or perhaps a mild infection. Never in my wildest dreams did I suspect it was something more sinister. It began with a persistent cough and swollen lymph nodes that didn't go away. After weeks of nagging symptoms and a growing sense of unease, I finally scheduled an appointment with my doctor. Several tests and a biopsy later, I found myself sitting in a sterile examination room, my heart pounding in my chest as I awaited the results. Dr. Edwards walked in, a solemn expression on his face. He sat down across from me, his eyes reflecting a gravity that sent a chill down my spine. "Adam, I'm afraid I have some difficult news," he began, his voice steady but gentle. "You have late-stage Hodgkin's lymphoma." The words hung in the air like a dark cloud. For a moment, everything else faded away. I stared at him, trying to process the information. "Cancer," I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "But how? I've always been healthy." Dr. Edwards nodded, understanding my disbelief. "Cancer doesn't always follow the rules, Adam. While we can't pinpoint an exact cause, it's likely a combination of genetic and environmental factors. The important thing now is to focus on treatment. There is a chance of survival, but it will be a tough journey." I left the doctor's office in a daze, clutching a stack of pamphlets and a treatment schedule. The drive home felt surreal, as if I were moving through a fog. When I walked through the front door, Michelle was in the kitchen, preparing dinner. Samantha was at the table, her textbook spread out in front of her. "Hey, how did it go?" Michelle asked, turning to look at me with a hopeful smile that quickly faded when she saw my expression. "We need to talk," I said, my voice strained. We sat down in the living room, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound breaking the silence. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "I just got back from the doctor," I began, my voice trembling. "I have late-stage Hodgkin's lymphoma." Michelle's face paled, her eyes widening in shock. "Oh my God, Adam. Are you sure? This can't be happening." Samantha looked up from her books, her face a mixture of confusion and fear. "Dad, what does that mean? Are you going to be okay?" I reached out, taking both of their hands in mine. "It means I have cancer. The doctor says it's serious, but there's a chance I can beat it with chemotherapy. It's going to be a tough road, but I'm going to fight this with everything I have." Michelle squeezed my hand, tears streaming down her face. "We're here for you, Adam. We'll get through this together." Samantha nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. "Yeah, Dad, we'll do whatever it takes to help you get better." That night, as we lay in bed, Michelle turned to me, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm scared, Adam. What if the treatment doesn't work?" I pulled her close, feeling the weight of her fear and my own. "I know it's scary, but we have to stay positive. We'll take it one day at a time, and we'll get through this together." The following week, I started chemotherapy. The first session was daunting, the sterile smell of the hospital, and the sight of the IV drip filling me with dread. Michelle sat by my side, holding my hand as the toxic chemicals flowed into my veins. "It's going to be okay," she said, her voice firm despite the tears in her eyes. "We'll get through this, Adam." I nodded, trying to hold on to her words, but the physical and emotional toll of the treatment quickly became apparent. The nausea, the weakness, the constant fatigue. It was like being hit by a freight train. Days turned into weeks, and the initial shock of my diagnosis was replaced by the relentless grind of treatment. Michelle and Samantha did their best to support me, but I could see the strain it was putting on them. There were days when I felt like a burden, my illness a dark cloud hanging over our family. One evening, after a particularly grueling session, I found myself struggling to get out of bed. Michelle came in, her face drawn with worry. "Do you need anything?" she asked, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "Just some water," I replied weakly. She sighed, a hint of frustration in her eyes. Can't you get it yourself? I'm really tired, Adam. Her words stung, a reminder of how much my illness was affecting them. I managed to sit up, forcing a smile. It's okay, I'll manage. As she left the room, I lay back down, staring at the ceiling. The realization hit me hard. Cancer wasn't just my battle. It was a war that was tearing my family apart. One morning, as Michelle was preparing breakfast, I struggled to get out of bed. The room spun around me, and I had to sit down to keep from falling over. Michelle glanced over at me, her brow furrowed with concern. Are you okay, Adam? She asked, her voice tinged with worry. I nodded weakly. Just a bit dizzy. It'll pass. She came over, placing a hand on my shoulder. You need to eat something. Let me get you some toast. As she turned back to the kitchen, Samantha entered the room, a worried look on her face. Dad, do you need anything? Can I help? I managed a small smile. Just seeing you helps, sweetheart. I'll be okay. Despite their efforts, the atmosphere at home grew increasingly tense. Michelle's exhaustion was palpable, her patience fraying as the weeks dragged on. Samantha, torn between her school responsibilities and her desire to help, became quieter, retreating into her room more often. One evening, after a particularly grueling chemotherapy session, I was too weak to make it upstairs. Michelle had just come home from work, and I could see the fatigue in her eyes. Michelle, I think I need some help getting to bed, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She sighed, a mixture of frustration and exhaustion evident. Can't you try a little harder, Adam? I've had a long day too. Her words cut deep, but I tried to hide my hurt. I'm sorry, I just don't have the strength today. She relented, helping me upstairs, but the tension between us was undeniable. We barely spoke as she helped me into bed. After she left the room, I lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling a crushing sense of helplessness. Michelle's frustration became more apparent, her patience wearing thin. One night, after an especially difficult day, she finally voiced her feelings. I can't do this anymore, Adam, she said, her voice breaking. I'm exhausted. I feel like I'm drowning. I need help. I looked at her, seeing the depth of her despair. I know this is hard, Michelle. Maybe we can hire a nurse to help out. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. The next day, I made some calls and arranged for a nurse to come in a few days a week. Her name was Catherine, a kind and experienced woman who immediately put us at ease. She took over many of the tasks that had been overwhelming Michelle, allowing her some much-needed respite. Catherine's presence brought a semblance of stability back into our lives. She was efficient, compassionate, and seemed to understand exactly what I needed. With her help, I managed to get through the worst of the treatment, but the emotional strain on our family remained. One day, when I returned from the hospital after another chemotherapy session, I found Michelle in the bedroom, packing her things. What are you doing? I asked, feeling my heart pounding harder. She looked up, her gaze cold and indifferent. I'm leaving, Adam. I need time for myself. For yourself. What about me? I'm fighting cancer, Michelle. My words erupted from me like a cry of desperation. She shrugged, indifferent to my pain. I can't take it anymore. You're too much for me. Her words struck me like a lightning bolt. I felt hope slipping through my fingers, leaving only bitter disappointment and the bitterness of lost love. Samantha, my daughter, stood in the doorway, silently observing the whole scene. Her face was expressionless, as if she had long since given up on me. You're leaving too? I asked, feeling my throat constricting with bitterness. Samantha nodded slowly, her gaze meeting her father's eyes. Yes, she replied quietly but resolutely. I need to focus on my studies, Dad. Your illness is distracting me. I feel like I should be somewhere else, where I can concentrate on my future. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks, the weight of her decision heavy on my shoulders. I understand, I murmured, trying to mask the ache in my heart. Avoiding my gaze, Samantha's voice took on a bitter edge. You're just so weak, Dad. she whispered, her words like a dagger to my chest. "You can't even protect me anymore. I can't stand to watch you suffer like this. I need to move forward with my own life." My soul was torn apart as I watched my family walk away from me. After Michelle and Samantha left, leaving me alone with my illness, I felt lost and betrayed. Their departure left a scar in me that no medicine could heal. But I knew that despite everything, I was not alone. By my side was Catherine, my hope and support in the darkest moments. Catherine had become an integral part of my daily routine. Her steady presence was a balm to the chaos that cancer had introduced into my life. As she and her daughter Lisa became more involved in my care, a new bond began to form, bringing unexpected warmth to my otherwise bleak days. Lisa, a bright and compassionate young woman, often accompanied Catherine on her visits. Initially, she was shy and reserved, but her genuine kindness and empathy soon shone through. One evening after a particularly tough day, Catherine and Lisa were in the kitchen preparing dinner. I mustered enough strength to join them, feeling a need for companionship. "Smells good in here," I remarked, leaning against the doorway for support. Catherine turned, a smile lighting up her face. "We're making your favorite, chicken soup. Thought it might be just what you need tonight." Lisa looked up from chopping vegetables, her eyes twinkling. "Mom says it's her secret recipe, but I think she just makes it up as she goes along." I chuckled, feeling a warmth that had been absent for too long. "Well, whatever she's doing, it's working. Thank you, both of you." As we sat down to eat, a comfortable silence settled over us. The simple act of sharing a meal brought a sense of normalcy that I desperately craved. After dinner, as Catherine cleaned up, Lisa and I moved to the living room. She picked up one of my books, thumbing through its pages. "Do you like to read?" she asked, glancing up at me. "Used to," I replied, my voice tinged with nostalgia. "It's been hard to focus lately, but I used to lose myself in books." Lisa nodded, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Maybe I could read to you sometime. It might help take your mind off things." I was touched by her offer. "I'd like that, Lisa. Thank you." Over the following weeks, Lisa began reading to me regularly. We went through various novels, her voice a soothing presence that made the pain and fatigue more bearable. Our sessions became a cherished part of my routine, offering a brief escape from the relentless grip of my illness. One evening, as Lisa and I were finishing another chapter of our current book, she closed the cover and looked at me thoughtfully. "Dad used to read to me when I was little," she said softly. "He passed away a few years ago. I miss those moments." I reached out, squeezing her hand. "I'm honored to share this with you, Lisa. Your dad would be proud of the young woman you've become." Tears welled in her eyes, and she hugged me tightly. "Thank you, Adam. You mean a lot to me." One afternoon, while Catherine was attending to my medication, I received a call from my lawyer informing me of my grandfather's passing and the contents of his will. The news came as a shock, yet it brought with it a sense of relief and gratitude. "Catherine, it's about my grandfather," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. "He left me an inheritance, a significant one." Catherine turned to me, concern etched on her features. "Adam, that's wonderful news. What does it mean for you?" I took a deep breath, trying to process the magnitude of the revelation. "He left me $11 million and a farm in the state where we live. It's more than I ever imagined." Catherine smiled, her eyes reflecting genuine happiness for me. "That's incredible, Adam. It's like a ray of sunshine breaking through the clouds." Her words filled me with a sense of hope and possibility. For the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to envision a future beyond the confines of my illness, a future filled with promise and opportunity. As the months passed, I slowly regained my strength. My hair grew back, my scars healed, and I started gaining weight. Catherine's unwavering support played a crucial role in my recovery. Once I was declared cancer-free, I made a significant decision. I transferred ownership of my house to Lisa, allowing me to start a new life on the farm with Catherine. This fresh start symbolized my triumph over adversity and the beginning of a new chapter. A year and a half after my recovery, the peace of my new life was shattered. Michelle and Samantha reappeared, attempting to claim my old house, now Lisa's home. They harassed Lisa, trying to intimidate her into giving up the property. However, Lisa stood firm, providing documented proof of her ownership, which I had legally transferred to her. During a phone call, she recounted the ordeal, and I was both proud and relieved at her resilience. The realization that my past could still disrupt my present was unsettling. Determined to protect my new life, I took steps to ensure Lisa's safety and maintain the boundaries I had set with Michelle and Samantha. The situation escalated when Michelle and Samantha showed up at my new home, demanding a share of the inheritance from my grandfather. Their aggression culminated in a violent outburst. They broke windows and tried to force their way inside. The police arrived promptly, arresting them on charges of vandalism, attempted break-in, and attempted assault. This incident was a stark reminder of the lengths to which they would go for money. I documented their actions meticulously and initiated legal proceedings against them, considering a restraining order to ensure my and Catherine's safety. Despite the turmoil, I found peace in my new life on the farm. Catherine and I nurtured our relationship, finding joy in the simplicity and beauty of our surroundings. I took up horse breeding, a fulfilling and therapeutic hobby that connected me to the land and my grandfather's legacy. Reflecting on my journey, I realized the strength I had gained through adversity. My legal battles were ongoing, but I was resolute in protecting my new life. With Catherine by my side and the tranquility of the farm, I embraced a future free from the shadows of my past, ready to build a life filled with love and purpose.